Hello, Linus. Let's take a look at your photography website today. Plenty of details to go over. I know your photography business is based in Dorset, England, and as with other wedding photographers, the main goal for the site is to have people contact you to ask for availability and to book you for the wedding. When we first spoke, I remember I asked you a few questions about your business, and I'd love to read out an interesting section that you wrote. Um, in one of those answers, you said the website is the number one marketing tool I use to get clients. I've put an awful lot of time into content along with SEO, so now have a great position on Google. I still feel that certain things elude me, as in the effectiveness of the pages, to project a strong brand that that create a true sense of value. And I thought that thing you said was very interesting. And in fact, when I asked you in another questions what's not working so well for you, you said it's enticing more people to get in touch that already have a clear understanding that quality costs and that they are ready and willing to commit and book. That's that's all quite interesting to me, and it kind of shows how you want people to perceive you and your website. So let's explore some ways to get there. Before I talk about the website design and layout in general, which I think is hugely important, especially in your photography niche, because that then impacts user experience and SEO and conversion rates and so forth. I let's talk a bit just about kind of the general content structure on your website. Overall, I think you have some excellent, really good content on the website. The depth of the content is incredible. You have a ton of stuff here. Just for example, going to the Dorset wedding venues page, where you list the various venues you've shot at, you have a huge table of actual weddings you shot there, some of which actually link to blog posts about those weddings. This is all fantastic, and I'm sure it's all way above average for what other wedding photographers do or teams of photographers. You also have a blog with tons of stuff there. You have wedding tips. You have a ton of informational and text pages and so forth, providing info. So you're doing really good in that department. Just quickly looking through your navigation menu here, and again, not talking about design details here. I'm again noticing a few issues here and there, but let's just keep this about the actual structure of the site. You prioritize weddings, of course, that's the main business, and you've placed portraits and engagements lower down in the menu according to importance, I think. So, which is good. It's nice to keep them separate. Um, there's surely an overlap between your wedding leads, and or maybe they book you for the wedding but then they're interested in doing other portrait sessions, or they want to do engagement shoots with you first, or things like that. So it's great to have these two pages on the website, but it's fine that you've placed them separate from the wedding stuff in the menu. So under weddings, you have the portfolio and the films, the videography section, which is good. It's straightforward. Then you have two wedding photography niches here, which is also excellent. It's good for SEO, for attracting these types of clients. So all good there. And the info drop down, investment page, which is excellent. You talk about the prices there. You also have another page where you talk about products and the prices for those, which is good. Meet the team acts as the about page. Reviews, which is testimonials. For photography websites, I usually recommend going with the word testimonials and not reviews, just to avoid confusion with camera gear reviews, which many other photographers do. Just for that reason alone, I'd go with the word testimonials instead of reviews. Then excellent stuff. You have style and approach, where you talk about your process, wedding tips, products that your clients can buy after the wedding, and then some special offers and discounts you have, which is all good. So an exhaustive, complete list of informational pages for your potential clients. No big suggestions here of missing content. So I don't think throughout the website I have anything to point out to you that, hey, you should write more stuff here. It's all very complete in terms of content. Then you have the blog area. That's, I guess, straightforward. Wedding venues. This is excellent. This is one of those pages. You can click on each of these venues, takes you to that specific venue page. You have links to actual weddings, this table right here. Again, this is all excellent in terms of content. And of course, the contact page, which is positioned well at the end. So the main menu here is it's good. It's straightforward. I think it's quite easy to understand, even though you have a ton of content on the website. Usually, it's hard to strike the balance. But and before we move on to design, I just wanted to point out this section here in the footer of your website, throughout the entire site. You have basically 3 columns here of some wedding venues for 3 cities. Now, I think you've chosen these 3 cities because they're one of your main ones. I know inside wedding venues here you have more. You have other locations. So maybe it would be a good idea to somehow include a button here or a link underneath these 3 columns, or underneath the Hampshire venues, because this column is shorter. Just a link pointing people to a page where they can view all other locations. I think you do have such a page, but it's not updated. Let's see. I can't click on the main menu, but I know it's a link, and if I open it up in a new page, you do have a specific page for this. It's under /wedding-venues, but it doesn't include all your locations. So you could make that kind of a landing page for all your venues, and you can link to it. Then in the footer, you have this 4th column, which kind of includes other specialties. I think most of these are added here for SEO purposes. I suspect that. I know you've said SEO is working well for you, so I assume all these pages helped. They're a bit too much from my perspective, but I'm more of a purist when it comes to SEO. I prefer things to go more organic, then this is a bit extra SEO stuff optimizing for me, because it's clear that you've pushed the phrase wedding photographer here a bunch of times, and each of these pages they kind of repeat content a bit. I've checked some of them, and sections right here are kind of all the same throughout these pages in the footer. This is a potential risk for duplicate content. You have, I guess, more than 10 pages with identical blocks of text. So not sure Google will like that. It's a bit too much, and it's not just about those blocks of text on the pages, which are duplicate. It's just the sheer fact that you're reusing this phrase this much, instead of trying to use some sort of variations or other phrases to express that. But whenever Google notices the exact same phrase close to each other 10, 15 times, it starts to ignore it, because it knows it's some sort of optimization. Don't forget that these links show up throughout your website. So on each and every page, each page that Google indexes, it notices these links again with wedding photographer again in them. So it will start to ignore them. Site-wide links have lower importance to Google, because it knows that they're usually placed in the footer or somewhere, and they're put there for SEO purposes. So is Google's way of avoiding being tricked that way. Anyway, good. Let's now move on to the general design of the website. I'll try to go page by page through your website, just the main important pages in your website, of course, not all of them. And since we're on we're not on the homepage, let's go back to the homepage. And just talk about design details in general. The template first. So details that apply to every page on your website, not just a specific page, header, footer, and other details. Starting with the header, you have the logo is good. It's really beautifully done. Since this is just the homepage and you have this slideshow here, the logo is just white, which is good. The problem I have is with the navigation menu. You're using the hamburger icon here on the left. In terms of design here, this is not as good, because it's black, and on some of the background images it's barely visible. I don't know. Let's pause the slideshow here. On this image, if I see it's hard for me to see the navigation menu icon here. So it's good to have some sort of background color to it, or make it white. I think that would work well. Of course, with lighter images that won't be visible again. But since the logo, you've made it white, why not make the navigation menu white as well? Anyway, when you click on it, it expands the side menu. I'm not fully sure. You should maybe consider having a kind of a regular navigation menu at the top. It can be instead of this hamburger menu icon. It's more elegant this way. You're showing a slideshow, and it's cleaner just to show the small icon. But not all people are that used to it as a web design, as user experience. At least not yet. Most people know this is an icon for a menu and it symbolizes a menu, but not all people know how to use it. Most people prefer seeing a regular menu item. In your case, since you can keep the logo in the center, but you could have a split menu item showing let's say three menu items to the left of the logo and the rest of them to the right of the logo. You could put maybe, let's say, home, weddings, and venues, and then info on the left, and the remaining ones, blog, portrait sessions, and contact on the right. So the most important ones on the left, of course. On the left, like I said, you'd have four of them: home, weddings, venues, just venues, to make it one word so it's shorter, and then info. They might fit well, but if they don't fit, you could replace home with just a small house icon or symbol. People at least know they can click on that to go back to the homepage. I'm sure most people also know they can click on the logo to go back to the homepage. So maybe consider switching back to a regular top navigation menu. At least do some testing for this if you can. Ask your web guy or designer, developer to set up a test for this maybe. And see how people interact with the website. See if there are any changes in bounce rates, in time on site, in number of pages per session, and things like that. But if you want to keep the existing menu, the existing header and navigation menu, maybe just look into fixing this icon here to make it more visible. I know that as you scroll down, you get the sticky navigation menu icon here, but it's placed in the top right of the website, which is a bit confusing. It might not be an option in the WordPress theme that you're using, which I know I've used it in the past. But with a bit of CSS code, you can position it on the left. When you use a normal header here, the menu icon is on the left, but that is, as you scroll down, it's on the right. It's not intuitive, especially since when you click on it, the menu slides in from the left again, so it should be positioned on the left. Another thing I'd point about the template overall is that I'm not a big fan of the accent color you're using. So everything throughout the website is kind of black or dark gray, but you're using this pale shade of green. I know it's in the green area. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think it's an earthy look, but maybe you were going for, maybe it's an old logo and you were stuck using it, or you were going for a nature outdoor vibe to the wedding portfolio or something like that. But I think the majority of your target audience would prefer a classier, more elegant color than this. This isn't what I'd go for randomly. Try to look into some other shades of maybe purple. I wouldn't say pink, but purple or even blue, which usually signifies professionalism or something like that. And you could even make it a bit more saturated, whichever color you're choosing. this is a bit too unsaturated, so it doesn't stand out as much as an accent color, as interest points here and there. About the footer, we talked about the links here in the columns. In the bottom section, you have the logo again. This is a different kind of logo. It's different from the one at the top. Consider maybe using the same logos, because this is branding. It's people should be familiar with your brand logo. Don't use two different logos. Make it consistent. Update the copyright year for the current year. Make it always do that. The contact information, you can turn the email and the phone number into clickable links, so people can just tap on them on mobile or click on them on desktop to call you or to send you an email. Don't force them to go to your about page necessarily, or to select the text and copy paste it. And finally, in the footer, you have the simplified navigation menu here. It's good to have one like this in the footer. The problem with it is it's not consistent with the main navigation menu. So you have home, then you say portfolio, which just goes to the wedding portfolio page. I understand that you don't want to include drop downs or, let's say, drop ups here. But portfolio, then you're saying portrait photography, whereas in the main menu on the left it's positioned lower because it's of lower importance. Portrait, engagement. Okay, you have contact and legal here, which is good. Another possible mistake here I see is prices, which kind of links to a page /investment, but that's not. This is it. It just takes you to the product information page, not to the main wedding info investment page. So this needs to be fixed and made consistent. Okay, so I think that was it about the footer. A few other small details I'll mention with social sharing icons. They don't show up on the homepage, but on many other pages through your website, they do show up here on the left. They're good. I kind of like them. The only problem with them is they overlap your left-hand side navigation menu. And as people expand them, they cover the menu items here. Of course, they can hide this, but it's annoying to have to do extra clicks just to browse around the site. Nothing should affect the navigation section. This could be easily fixed again with some CSS code, maybe 2 lines of code using the z-index attribute. So the side header always shows up above the social media icons, but it's something to look into. And finally, as I was preparing for this and browsing through your website, it kind of became annoying when pages take a while to load. It's not about performance, it's because the initial layout is ugly, and then as the browser loads the CSS code, the styles get loaded and everything falls into place. But for those initial 1 or 2 seconds, it's a bit of a mess, and I'm refreshing the page so you can see that. Let me try to load a different page, a random one. Let's say this one. Okay, ugly text, and then it falls into place. Now, this comes down to 2 things. One would be website performance in general. I know the website is doing a good job in that department. Everything is minified. I know I've seen in the code you're using the WP Rocket plugin, which I think is excellent. So no big improvements there. But you could, the second suggestion maybe would be to turn on the WordPress theme's loading animation for pages. I don't often recommend this because it kind of, the perceived performance is lower. Instead of loading text immediately, it just shows a white screen and a logo of some sort of, or a logo animation, a rotating circle or something like you see on many other websites out there, until the full page finishes loading, and then that animation fades away and you see the page. I'm sure you know what I'm referring to. Perceived performance maybe is lower because people have to wait for that. But in this case, because you have a very content-rich website with lots of sections and rows and layouts, and especially slideshows which take up time, it's better to enable that loading animation. Pages would look cleaner. Everything would be classier. You would load a page, okay, you'd see the loading animation, but none of this flickering, the messy loading of the styles and everything kind of is ugly for a second, and then it moves a bit, and then it finally falls into its final layout. That's too much visually, and I'd much rather see a blank screen with a logo or a rotating circle or something. Then see the layout change like that. Okay, let's talk about the page designs through your website. I'll try to go through some of your main pages, but as a general conclusion from what I've seen, as an overall impression, I think as well as you're doing in terms of content, in terms of design, everything is a bit too basic and unpolished. Not everything. Some elements I think are good, while others are just using the WordPress theme default. And they kind of look like they could be put together by, I don't know, anyone without very serious web design experience. They're just blocks put together without any much time spent tweaking the finer details that would make them look really elegant. So let's try to do that now, and I'll show you what I mean. So we're on the home page. I like this type of slideshow. I know and have used it in the past. It shows the remaining time for each slide, and you have these small thumbnails for them. It's fine. But it's a bit too tall. So for this screen size that I'm using now, which is 1920 by 1080 pixels, standard HD resolution, and it's close to what laptop screens are using for their screen dimensions. I would make this slideshow shorter, like 60-70% of the screen height, and then you should already start seeing the stuff that's underneath. That tells people that, okay, there's more down below. It's not just a full screen slideshow and that's it, because it's confusing. Other wedding photography websites do just that. The homepage is just a full screen slideshow and people have to use the navigation menu to go to other pages, but you have a ton of extra stuff on the homepage. Make it clear to people that they should scroll down. To do that, this slideshow is way too tall. think of it as I can't, just a small comment here. I can't see the navigation menu. Oh, here it is. It was barely visible because it's black. If you go to the portfolio page, I think you're using an image here. You can see here, this doesn't take up the full height of the screen. It's a hero image. It's not a slideshow, but you get the idea. People can start to see that they can scroll down. Something like that for the homepage, I think, would be a good idea. That means that the images would get cropped, more of a panoramic layout to them. So it would require some work from you for choosing the images that would work well, or cropping them beforehand on your computer. But I think it's well worth the effort. Then going down, these winner badges logos here are excellent. They show social proof. And then you have this very interesting heading here, which just opens an expandable section with more info. A few comments on this. First of all, I would put this expandable trigger here above these logos, so just right underneath the slider. So when people are at the top of the page, the slider only shows up till 60-70% of the height, and then they see the heading here and maybe the tops of the logos. I think that would work really well. Then, as you expand this, I don't like that the headline repeats itself. Now it looks to be both. No need for this one again. And generally, the content here is really good. I'm not a fan of justified text. I know this is all justified. I'd much rather see it left aligned, but this maybe comes down to personal preference. But visually, in terms of typography, this is a bit of a mess because you have way too many font styles here, font faces and different font sizes and even colors. You have one, two, which is stronger, this one smaller, this is the fourth one, which is some sort of a cursive text. Then you have kind of the main body font. This line is bigger again. This is kind of a subheading, but it's another font look. It's the sixth one maybe. You get the idea. This needs to be all much more consistent. 2 or 3 looks. Okay, headings could be different font sizes in descending order, H1, H2, H3, so forth. But this doesn't need to be here. If you need to emphasize this, keep it as a regular font size, but make it bold or something like that. And these subheadings need to be larger, consistent with this one or this one. Either way, all these styles need to be trimmed down a bit. Now, it's a lot of content here. I'm not sure everyone would sit and read through all of it. You could consider maybe shortening it, but visually, it's a bit too boring just to scroll through all of this. You could make it much more pleasing visually by using columns and background color. So let's say these two sections, for example, could be left and right columns, and some of those could have a very discrete light gray background color to them, and things like that. It's just a big block of text. You could be doing so much better with this, with colors, with columns, with borders around sections, or maybe with images in a checkered layout, one image to the right, one image to the left, and so forth, to make it all more visually pleasing. Then you have this image, which I think is fantastic. the quote from Peter Adams. I'm not sure it was visible in the video, but as I scroll past to it, it's this kind of cheesy animation as you scroll down, and I've noticed that on other pages of the website. As you scroll down, you get some elements slide into view. I think they don't look good. They're not classy, not good for wedding photography websites, especially. Only go with a fade in animation, not jumping around, sliding from the sides or from the top or bottom. Um, it's just, those are WordPress defaults and they don't look as good. Just make them fade in slowly into view, not very slowly, half a second at most. You've included this blog, this block of text. Check out the new portfolio page on throughout your website. It's in many places. Most people, you have to check and see how much of your traffic is first-time visitors versus return visitors. Because first-time visitors won't care that you've just updated this. Just put out your best work and don't tell them necessarily that you've updated it. For return clients, okay, they might be interested to know that, but usually no need to make a big announcement of it on the homepage. Just maybe consider writing about it in the blog area, maybe, but this is a bit too much. And be careful on other pages in your website where you've included this blog. You're still saying 2017 on some other pages. You need to check. On the homepage is good. Then you have blog posts. This entire section is a bit ugly to me. A lot of details to go over, but quickly, the light gray background color could be spread out to the edges of the website, so it should be a full width row. That would look cleaner. Then no need to use these shadows under the thumbnails. The rest of the website is such a modern flat look. No need to use shadows like this. Then again, a lot of fonts here. The padding for each of these blocks is too small. It's too close to the edges of each element here. Extra padding would be needed, 20-30 pixels. The buttons are very strange. I don't like the background color for them. Keep them a solid color and just change color on hover, but not the gradient look. I'm sure this comes down to theme options and leaving some defaults there and not really polishing, going through all of them. So something to look into. The spacing below this button here, it's missing, fixable with CSS code. This line, horizontal black line here, could go away, or it could be turned into gray something. This text here has this weird extra spacing to the left, so the text is justified. I don't think it looks good in narrow columns like this because you get these huge spaces between words. So a ton of details here to polish and to have a web designer go through everything and make sure it's all clean and everything. Moving on, you have reviews, which are testimonials. Again, a ton of font styles here, a bit messy again. Font size is a bit too small. I know this is a slider and I can click to drag them, but that's just through experimentation. You don't display any arrows, and I think you should, to the sides of the thumbnails, some arrows to let people know they can click to view other ones. It's not a single testimonial. Then you had the Instagram block, which I think it's fine. 9 thumbnails per page. I would make them a bit larger, maybe show 7, 8 at most. So they're slightly larger. Once you click on them, it opens up this lightbox view, and you can view more. I think it's fine. And then at the end of the homepage, you just have the single link to Dorset wedding venues. I think this is not the main action you want people to take, especially first-time visitors to your website. And this kind of raises up an important point on using call to action buttons throughout your website to try to lead people through a path through your website. After they finished reading your homepage, what main action should they do next? Where do you want them to go to? Maybe you want them to go to your wedding portfolio. I guess that would be a sensible option. Or you would want them to go to one of your info pages, either to the Meet the Team page or to the investment page. I think those two would be two good options. And once they reach those pages, at the end of those pages, they should have call to action buttons again, pointing them to the next page in the series, whichever page makes sense next for them to see. There's a website, a wedding photography website out there that I love giving as an example for this. Let me try to load it up quickly. This kind of takes it to the extreme, but it's a good case study. So on the homepage, you just get this start tour call to action button. That's the main action you want visitors to take. And the tour pages are actually part of the navigation menu here. You don't have to do it this way necessarily, but these are the pages that you want first-time visitors to the website to go through. This is what these photographers have done. A welcome page, their bios, they take people to their pricing, an FAQ, and at the end of all of that, encouraging people to contact them after they've read all of the important information. Part of this tour is not actually a wedding portfolio. That's an option for people to go do that, but you get the idea of how important call to action buttons are to take people on a journey through your website. And I think you could be doing that as well. So for example, if you take people to your wedding portfolio page at the, a bit of display issue here. Let me reload it. I don't know why it's not loading them on the left. Some sort of bug here. Maybe it's just temporary. At the end of the wedding portfolio page, okay, you're mentioning some featured weddings. People can go and explore those. Again, careful with the font colors here. This text is barely readable here. But at the end of the page, take people to the investment page or to the about page. That's the next step they should take. Okay, you get the idea on that. So I think we kind of covered the homepage. I think we need to move on to other ones. Again, the wedding portfolio page. Not sure why it's showing this empty space on the left. When I tested the page before, it was loading fine. So I don't know what's going on. Again, you could add some sort of background color, a box underneath the heading here, just so it's visible on the background image here. Then I think this grid of thumbnails is really good. It's a justified image grid, which is the one I like the most, better than a masonry grid. So good job there. I know it's using the Magnific Pro Lightbox script, which is excellent. It uses keyboard arrows as well. You can go full screen if you want. So this is all good. I think the thumbnail sizes are fine. So again, I already mentioned it here. Ask people to go to a different page at the end of all of this. That's about it. You're just encouraging people to explore your featured weddings here, which I think it's fine. It makes sense, but they might get lost just looking at examples and viewing some of your weddings instead of pointing them to your more impressive pages that you have here in the info, like investment or style and approach, or things like that. Those would make more impact in convincing them to hire you. Okay, moving on. Okay, you have the videography page, Asian weddings, same-sex weddings. I won't go into those right now. Instead, I'm jumping to the info section. So the investment page, many design details here are messy. This is actually a good page to use as an example for an unpolished page. You have this extra space at the top above the image below the header. It shouldn't be there. It's easily fixable. The text here is not centered. It's white. It's barely visible, so it's kind of useless here. But it's centered, maybe larger, maybe right above a box, a rectangular box with a semi-transparent gray background or something. Underneath that, you have, okay, it's a testimonial, but then you have another parallax section, this one being very narrow. It's not good to have two parallax sections like these so close to each other, because it feels like it's a before and after preview of the sections. They look better when there's extra spacing between them, so something taller than this quote. And yeah, look into how you can restructure the page to put more spacing between them. This testimonial is looks I haven't read the text, but visually it looks uglier than how testimonials reviews look on your homepage or in other pages. So they should all be consistent. The testimonials always look good when you include a small portrait image for the client who said that. Okay, and then you write about what your collections include. These are 5 blocks of text. They could be made prettier, I guess. They're a bit too basic now. And the actual prices, you could emphasize them more, maybe put them at the top or make them stand out more, bigger font size or something. Okay, here's a call to action button asking people to contact you, which is good. But it's too close to the image section underneath. It's not consistent with your other pages. This one has square corners, whereas other buttons in your website have rounded corners. So things like that, you need to look into consistency. This is a nice testimonials. The text is visible here because it's above kind of a blurred out of focus section of the image, so it's visible. You talk about optional add-ons, which are good. You could include another call to action button here below the center column, asking people to contact you again. And then you have another testimonials, but remove this extra spacing underneath. And again, you can see how the text is very unreadable here. Throughout your website, on top of background images, you need to look into that. Okay, meet the team. In terms of content, this is fine. In terms of design, again, it's a bit messy. Too small of a spacing here on the left where the light gray background color starts. This should be maybe a full width row, and you've gone for this odd and even look, but make them full width rows. That would look better. Portrait images are fine, but notice how they're not perfectly aligned. The text starts here, but the image starts slightly to the right, and things like that needs to be polished a bit. In terms of content, again, this is quite good. Reviews. Again, this should load up in 2 columns, and I know it did that in the past, so it's just something to do with the current browser size or something. But anyway, all these testimonials, they're fine because they're using portrait images, but some tweaking. The location here is a bit too small, and there's way too much text above and below each one's. Everything gets pushed up lower and lower. The page is too long, so removing some of the paddings here or something, it's a double padding, would make the page a bit more compact. Okay, moving on. Style and approach. This is nice. You're using these big images to show what you mean. It's typography is not pretty here, and I don't think we talked about the body font size throughout the website. It's a bit too basic for my taste. Let me quickly take a look at what font family you're using. It's Museo Sans, which is it's good, but the font size is a bit too small. I would increase it by 1 or 2 pixels, so it's a bit larger. And the headings throughout the website, as I've already explained, are a bit of a mess. They're inconsistent, and that doesn't look very classy. Wedding planning tips. This kind of feels like entryways into some blog posts with tips. This is all good. It's great to have a page like this. Products. This page, I've looked at it before. This is generally good. This image here of the open photo album, if you have a different one with different images from the actual party, from the actual wedding reception where people are dancing and really fun, instead these images are just from the wedding preparations. They're not as intriguing. And these product photos could be made larger and expanded so they align better with the text. This one on the left is particularly too small. And the heading here is, I don't know what it is, pricing from. It should mention the actual price, not just tell people they can read it here. Some videos here, everything else is pretty okay. And offers, I won't go into these two. I know they're a bit messy in terms of layout, but again, in line with the other pages that we talked about. The blog section, the layout should be in 2 columns here again. I don't know why it's not doing that, but generally speaking, the blog looks good. Blog posts have text in them, not just images, and they're pretty long, uh, full with images. People have to really scroll a lot. I know this is common for wedding photography websites. Many people have these types of blog posts with all huge tens of images in them. You could look into displaying all of these as a grid of thumbnails with the lightbox view, so people can click on the thumbnails to open them up in a slideshow instead of having them to scroll down a bit. But I know this is more visually impressive for them to actually view the big images. So you can leave them as it is, I guess. Then the wedding venue section, let's take Devon randomly. Good to include text, a lot of good SEO stuff here. You're mentioning some of the main venues here, the table of actual weddings you shot. Make sure you check all the links here, because I remember when I was testing your website before, I randomly clicked on some of these and they pointed to a 404 page, a page not found error. So you need to double test them. And let's say we want to go into one wedding venue. I can't click on the image, which should be allowed. It's more intuitive. Only clicking on the text works. But once we do that, we have a ton of text here, a good call to action. I don't know what this, let's refresh, this empty section here is. This is useless. So small details like that you can look into polishing. You really need to go through all these pages and fix them. Portrait and engagement photography, just text pages. You included some grids of images here, which I think are nice. I think the problem with them is clicking on them uses a different lightbox script. I don't like this one as much. I don't remember what it's called. Photo something, but it's not as good as the magnific pop-up that you've used in your wedding portfolio page, so try to use that. And finally, since we've really gone a long time here with all the pages, the contact page, problems with it are too much empty space here between these lines of text. That's too much. You have two different contact forms, which is good. It's actually a good idea for wedding photographers. For some clients, you need to ask for a lot of wedding details. For others, it's just a general contact form. These are two tabs. On page load, I'm not seeing the wedding form initially. It's not loading up all of the time. It's missing. If I click on general and go back to wedding inquiry, I see it. So it's something you need to look into to fix. And these award badges here, I guess they're fine. They're social proof. You could consider including some of them on the homepage, like you did, not just the 3 ones. It's your decision. I guess maybe 5 would look good, and yeah, things like that. I think that covers it in terms of design for the website. I hope you got some useful tips out of all of this. Finally, I wanted to touch on a few other aspects of the website, SEO and other details. With SEO, in terms of content, I already said you're doing a great job. For permalinks, the contact page has a URL that's /contact-2. This is already visible if you go to the style and approach page. It's my-style-2. You can fix those. You can change those permalinks. You probably have an old page in your WordPress trash that's using the main slugs, but it's easily fixable. And another suggestion for permalinks is you have wedding venues. Let's say you go to Hertfordshire. So the URL here is /Hertfordshire wedding venues. You could, let me try to open up a Google search. So this was the URL for that page. Oh no, I was going inside this. Let's see. So this is URL for the Hertfordshire wedding venue page. Instead of this, you could have ignore the Google suggestions. You could, why not have it as wedding venues / Hertfordshire, and that's it. This would still work well because you still have wedding venues as a keyword inside it. So Hertfordshire would just be a child page of the main wedding venues page. And keeping this as it is, if you then go inside an individual venue page, instead of it being in the root of the site, so it's domain.co.uk/London Shenley Club wedding photographer, why not put all of that at the end? So this venue page becomes a child page of the Hertfordshire page, which in turn is a child page of the wedding venues. So a permalink structure like this would make more sense. It would look better to Google. It would still include the keywords you want. Everything is the same. In fact, instead of just having this for the individual venue pages, you'd have this or extra keywords for the venue pages. And yeah, I think that makes more sense. And not to mention, if this is a child page of the location, which is a child page of wedding venues, when you're on this page, it would get highlighted here in the navigation menu. WordPress would know this is part of the wedding venue section, whereas now it's not a child page of anything, so you don't know where you are. Yeah, that's an idea. I don't think, going through a few other SEO checks that I did, I don't think you're doing a good job with headings on your page. H1, H2, H3, this is the homepage, for example. It only contains one H1 heading, this one, which is good. Only one per page is ideal. The page contains no H2 headings at all, but it then contains a ton of H3 headings throughout the various sections. I don't know, maybe this one, maybe these ones. I won't load up the source code now. I don't remember which ones, but you have to check. Some of these headings should be turned into H2, some should be kept into an H3, and they should all form kind of the hierarchy for the page structure. But you're not using any H2 headings. And I'm sure if you go through other pages in your website, this is a valid point again. So this is an important SEO aspect that you should look into, how you're using headings. Another big one, which I think you're not doing well, is alt tags. I've checked some images on the homepage like this one, and the alt tag is Dorset wedding photography. I checked alt tags for images on other pages of your website, and they were using the same alt tag. I think I checked some of them in your wedding portfolio page, and they were all using the same alt tag. This is not good for SEO reasons. You're not describing each photo. That's an opportunity missed, and again, it's repeated content that Google will start to ignore or even punish you for it. But it's at least okay. It's hard to add unique alt tags to all the images in your wedding portfolio because there are many. But at least for static images like this one and other single images that you're using throughout your informational pages, definitely go into WordPress and add unique alt text to them, describing what the photo is. No comma separated list of keywords, just natural sounding description of what the image is all about, and maybe including some relevant keywords that you want to rank for in them. Other than that, there are a few other things I noticed. Is you're not including any social media profile links anywhere. At least I couldn't find them easily. Maybe they're in the blog area, I don't know, but browsing through your informational pages, I couldn't see any links to a Facebook profile or a Twitter profile. It's just the Instagram section here. Maybe this is your decision. You just want to focus on Instagram and ignore the other ones. But if you do use other big social media platforms, definitely include links to them. Okay, aside from this, the website is mobile friendly, so that's good. It comes with the WordPress theme, so no big changes there. Of course, you should be testing out, especially after you make structural or design changes, you should be testing out the main pages on mobile as well. Sometimes as screens get smaller, tablet and then mobile, not all the layout elements position themselves well, so testing is much recommended there. In terms of performance, if we run your website through Google's PageSpeed tool, let's wait for it to load a bit. I remember I know the website is doing pretty well because of the good performance plugin that it's using, so many of the tests are passed and good. But let's go a bit through the ones that Google thinks are not perfect. Okay, so what Google reports is that you should optimize images. Some of these images are, I think, images you're using in your homepage slider at the top. They should be compressed more. I have articles on my blog about how to compress images, what WordPress plugins to use for that automatically and things like that. But this is something you should optimize because Google cares about optimizing images. Aside from this, you have browser caching, but I wouldn't worry about this. These are all external resources. Facebook and analytics and other stuff, you can't control caching for them because they're external, but everything on your website is cached by your performance plugin, which is good. Okay, that was my cat trying to chime in here with some suggestions. Hope you understood that. Small comment here. I noticed you're using Hotjar for user testing and recording what actions people take on your website. I think that's a great tool. If you're not very happy with it, another suggestion as a replacement for it, which I've switched to, is Full Story. You could check that out. I think they're a bit better than Hotjar. Then moving on, render blocking JavaScript. This is just the jQuery. It's needed by the website. You can't defer it with this WordPress theme, so it's fine here. And CSS, I think everything is minified, but there's one left here that's not minified. Maybe you could tweak the performance plugin settings to also minify this one if it works. Sometimes you run into layout problems, but something to look into. Other optimizations which are passed, this is excellent. Work done by you and the performance plugin, so all good there. Back to the website, the only small other thing I noticed is if I, in the address bar, if I type in / random keywords just to trigger on a 404 page, this loads up. This could be made prettier, I guess. This is using some sort of plugin, I assume, that shows this, but it could be made more elegant. And I think in one testing tool, it said that this does not trigger an actual 404 response code from the server. So Google doesn't really consider this as a missing page. It just thinks it's another regular page on your website. So something to have a developer look into. It's usually fixable with a good 404 plugin for WordPress that triggers the correct response code. Okay, that's it from me. I think this was all helpful. We covered a lot of stuff, and I'm looking forward to scheduling a call with you to maybe explain some of the decisions behind your website content, and maybe tell me if I missed anything critical or if I misunderstood any of the goals of some of your pages, and to answer any other questions you might have. But that's it for now, and good luck with everything. Talk to you soon.